Awesome. Uh, Great. Yeah. So I just had some notes here. So this it's basically called Sit in the Fire. Um, it's about well, it's really a course for to learn from like what I term elders to avoid common failures
Yeah.
that the future generation, right? So the course will help you learn how to heal themselves from the inside out. Basically, it's based on the wisdom of individuals. Like I term elders like people who have been doing something for a long period of.
Yeah.
So even an elder could be like 30 years old, but like especially if they've been on the inside for like 20 years or something.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Yeah.
So help them learn from their teachings, like because I think we all have our certain teachings, and I look back at all the information that has kind of like been lost or all the elders that I used to work with, and half of them are gone, and so their
Yeah.
teachings, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll help them learn avoid common sabotages and failures, and it's based on wisdom that will help them learn from the teachings. Yeah. So yeah, I saw a little bit in the agenda there. So I don't know if you wanted to introduce yourself.
Hi. I'm Kevin Barlow. That's my English name, but in my language, I'm Mi'kmaq. My name is said as Maktueg Moon Ga'amit Nkulum Bizun, which means black bear standing looking for medicine.
Awesome. Yeah. That's so Mi'kmaq. So is that from back east or somewhere?
Yeah, I'm from New Brunswick, but the Mi'kmaq are from parts of Quebec, all through the Atlantic provinces and down into Maine.
Yeah. My sister-in-law lives in New Brunswick.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So
Yeah.
in 2012, we went back there, and uh, I, like her parents used to stay like they're Filipino. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So she lived. They lived with us since 2007. So we kind of
Right
like
on.
sponsored them, and then so I could see concern. So we had to. I brought them to yeah, to see her sister who lived there for a long time. So I
Yeah.
could see concern. So then, yeah, we brought them there, and
Great.
yeah, we went to the Hope Elder Rocks there and all that, and toured.
Yeah.
They have a big kite festival. That we
Yeah.
went there. Yeah, it was pretty cool, pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all the lighthouses and everything, and the covered bridges and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice little province in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So yeah. So you live out back in Lower Mainland there now, or
Yeah. Right now, I live on the Capilano Reserve in North Vancouver. I moved over here. I was in the west end of Vancouver, and then I moved over here just after the pandemic started. So I've been enjoying it. It's a little bit more quieter than downtown Vancouver.
oh yeah. Less sirens and stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great. Yeah, I ran into a few Mi'kmaqs around the Lower Mainland. They're like I think
Yeah, yeah.
they're
There's a few out here, like Leslie, who used to work with the city, and the lady that runs BC Aboriginal Child Care Society is Mi'kmaq, and so yeah, there's a few of us who ran away from the snow and cold and came out here.
awesome. Yeah. So yeah, like so you've had lots of experiences, eh? Like I guess work experiences and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my career really started when I decided to get sober and stop alcohol and drugs. I was really young when I tried to stop. I think I was 21, which shows you that it was kind of getting out of control at a very early age. But it didn't quite stick at that point because I still thought I was young and I was just wanting to have a good time. But somewhere around 27, I reached out for help and found it. And since then, I've been sober from all mind and mood altering substances. So that's now 33 years that I've been walking the red road.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. So like I'm only at 26, but yeah, went through some dark times in
Yeah.
that 26 years where it feels really
Oh,
lonely. Yeah.
yeah. Just because we get sober doesn't mean life doesn't uh, stay all up on the positive side. We still get curveballs, health issues, job issues, relationship breakups, things like that. So, but I think the thing about it for me is that I learned how to cope with it and deal with it. A lot better than when I was drinking, because when I drank, I just ran away from my problems. But now I can deal with them, even though it might be difficult. And I've learned that I don't need to do it alone. I can reach out for help, and I think that's one of the problems for men, especially, is that sometimes we think we can't reach out and ask for help. Like we think we need to be tough and do it on our own type thing. But I've learned that there's a lot of value in reaching out for help.
Yeah, I just heard that very concept like last week, uh, or from Elder Jerry Oldman. Like
Yeah,
he was in ceremony, and I was listening to his podcast, and he's saying, "Yeah, I realized I needed to reach out, and it brought tears to my eyes. Actually, yeah, just like
yeah,
hearing
yeah,
it. Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's and he's doing a lot. He's doing he's doing this stuff here too, just by himself. I think. With have you listened to his podcast? Or?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I think that's the thing, right? Like, I mean, even when people get much older than me, but they're still doing a lot of this spiritual work through ceremony and stuff like that, they too need support, right? And I think that's even sometimes why they have helpers that kind of help them do things and get ready for sweats and stuff like that. That they can't just do it all on their own by you know especially the physical stuff. But I think they still need to connect with people to kind of deal with how to interpret things that are happening spiritually, and how better to support people and that type of thing. So most elders end up having other elders that they're connected to, and some are older that they learn from. But I guess at a certain point, a lot of those older elders, and especially through the pandemic, I found we lost a lot of elders because of the COVID. Like, so it's important for us to be connected to our circle of support, and get that help.
Yeah, yes, yeah. That's actually like my whole initial dream, like I've been working on for a while, was a recovery house. But then, because yeah, pandemic and like I wasn't getting a license for recovery house is monumental, and so I
Yeah,
kind of transitioned. So I moved it from being a physical location to kind of like being online. I think yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what.
I think there's different ways, right, that we can sort of bring that message of help and hope to people, and in this day and age with all technology and social media and stuff, like, I don't know half of the apps like TikTok and stuff like that, but those are ways to reach people, and so I think it's good for us to use those kind of tools in this modern day, uh, and we can still work on those other dreams of, because there's a lot of value I see in where people need to take a break from the way they are living, especially if they're active in alcohol or drugs. Sometimes they need that break from that, and they need to go somewhere and do some healing. And I know that I've seen cases where when people want to stop drinking, they go on the land to detoxify, and their blood pressures come back down to normal really quick. uh, they get better a lot faster because they're in a natural environment, and they're not stressed by getting texts or calls, or your drug dealer trying to sell you stuff, things like that. You're basically out of sight, out of mind, and it gives them that recharge. And I think that's so important for our people to go back to the ways that we know work. Being on the land, our connection to the land, our connection to the water, because when you're out in nature, there's that calming effect, right, where everything is in its place. A bear isn't trying to be anything other than a bear. A coyote isn't trying to be anything other than a coyote. The birds are there singing, and everything is just natural. And so for us humans, sometimes we think we're smart, but then we end up denying a lot of aspects or elements of our life, and we pretend to be something else, like we pretend to be more important, or that our ego takes over and we think that we're greater than other people or better than other people. But when you're in nature, everything's so natural and we know our place. And so I think for us, that's the medicine that we need, is to be on the land and by the water.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. Like, yeah, so what I want to do, like, I've faced the challenges of, working in this field with some of the organizations and some of the leadership and stuff. And I think to me, it feels like they sort of miss a step somewhere. Like they really don't do their own healing. I don't know. But so that's why I started, well, basically Indigenous Wellness Training Society was to I want to work with people from 0 to say 3 years of sobriety, and help them in shape. Work with them not for like 2 years. I initially wanted 2 years, but I found out it takes 20 years to get out of poverty. So maybe
Yeah.
10, 15, 20 years. And
Yeah.
then like work with them, and like I only want maybe 10 program champions, I call them, and work with them and make sure hopefully they do their healing in or some form of healing, a little bit more thorough and honest. And so when they get into those positions of leadership, that they don't take their things out on other people, and because it really, I know what your experience is with that.
Oh, definitely. I think, there's that old saying, right, that we can only give people what we have. And so if we still have anger and resentment and hurts that haven't fully healed, then we end up passing that on to other people. And we may think that we're doing good, and that type of thing, but our behaviors may say something else. And a lot of our wounds get triggered so easily when we're not taking care of ourselves. Like, so if we grew up in a dysfunctional home, where maybe there was like family violence and stuff like that, those can easily get triggered again in adulthood, when we become overwhelmed and stressed with life pressures and work pressures and things like that. And working in the healing sector, but even any kind of job, really, you know, how we conduct ourselves is so important, because if we don't take care of ourselves, then we're part of the problem in a way. And so I think it's really good what you're doing, is trying to build that solid foundation with people. I'm working with a group of traditional practitioners on the island, and they even did a pilot program one year with where they helped people detoxify from alcohol and drugs. They took them on the land for 40 days, but they had a nurse practitioner with them too. So they were using their skills and their experience, but also trying to take care of the biomedical stuff by having a nurse there. And they worked with people and monitored their blood pressures and their withdrawals and stuff, and gave them a stronger foundation. And I'm currently in discussions with a group of people that are trying to figure out a way of, if we can get people here in the city, and especially those that may be struggling in the downtown east side, to make a break from here, and we take them on the land, and we try to keep them there for as long as they need, whether that's 6 months or 9 months or a year, and give them the really solid foundation that helps them make the break from alcohol and drugs. And then when they think they're ready to come back, then we slowly bring them back into the city. And what we would do is work with housing providers and places like that to find them housing. But we would also surround them with a kind of a circle of mentors or helper, who can be there to, help them deal with life stress and finding a job and getting their ID and all these kind of things. And that way they don't have to run back to alcohol and drugs when they get a setback. There'll be 3, 4 people that they can talk to and reach out to, and these are volunteers, so it wouldn't cost, but it'll give them a much solid foundation, better foundation to come back into life as a sober person. So I think it's kind of the same model of what you're talking about, is that essentially what we're saying is we need to kind of walk with people a lot closer at the beginning, especially because some of these drugs are so potent that they're so highly addictive that, to make that break, that's why sometimes people need methadone and Suboxone and all those other things. But, I think if we deal with the spiritual elements and support people and make them know they're not alone, maybe they can handle things better without having to use those things. And I'm not saying methadone and Suboxone isn't good, but like maybe they just can handle things a lot better because they're given a good place to live. They're having people that will support them and help them do their resume to find work and things like that. So I think that's the model to go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very inspirational to find out that other people are, yeah, moving along those lines, and they're
Yeah.
far ahead. And like, I wonder how did they get so far ahead, though? But I don't know. Yeah, I guess there is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you think about it, right, the 12-step model is basically it's a fellowship where people share their experience, strength, and hope with other people, right? So once again, they're not being left alone. And then in those fellowships, there are people that have been around who have worked a program of recovery, and once they've gone through those steps, they share that with new people and stuff. So it's the same model that has worked, but we do know that 12-step fellowships don't work for everybody. Like
No.
some people uh, turn to their traditions and they go through ceremony, and that's what works for them, whether it's Sundance or other ceremonies. There's others that turn to religion, and they work with the faith-based approach, and with their priest or pastor, and the faith community, they're able to stay sober and turn their lives around. So I think we need to consider all approaches as being equal and valid, and what works for somebody might work for them, but maybe it doesn't work for somebody else. So let's be open to other approaches.
Yeah, I often tell people like that the only difference between me and them is maybe they have well, even if they have 3 years of sobriety, I've probably had more bad days
Yeah,
in sobriety than they've had total sobriety. So yeah, the only difference is that I've had a lot longer, say, to figure these things out and try to find. But I
yeah,
did that. My foundation was a 12 step, so too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And we can do that with people, right? Like share how we got through a bad day without having to run to
yeah,
a drink or a drug. And so I think that's the downside at the beginning when somebody's just trying to get sober is humans are creatures of habit. So sometimes we want to go back to the way we did things, even though it wasn't working, but it's the only thing we know. And for people like you and I who have walked through these things, a longer, we can say there is another way, and you don't have to do it. You can tell me your problems, vent to me, and I'll help you find another way of looking at it, right? And so I think all the different approaches that I mentioned use that same approach where you're not doing it alone, you're doing it with others.
yeah. Like an eclectic type thing. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah, I've been able to dabble in quite a bit, even like yeah, just the addictive voice recognition technique or stuff like that. Yeah,
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 yeah. Which yeah, I've been in various groups where people with like even like I was younger, but they had 25 years of sobriety, and because of the way I structured it somehow, I don't know how, but yeah, they just broke down in tears and in the workshop. I mean, for me though, that's healing. Like, and so I think it doesn't matter how far we get in here. We
yeah.
yeah,
I think that's the thing. One of the steps talks about doing that constant daily inventory, right? And I think some of us, especially men, I find, and this is why I think it's so important for more men to get into the helping professions, because men were conditioned sometimes, like, when I grew up, like, I heard uh, big boys don't cry, that
mm,
type of thing,
mm,
and so we're sometimes taught or conditioned to swallow our emotions, and then sometimes we see people, men fighting, and so we think violence is the solution. So then we use that as a coping mechanism when we're feeling threatened or fearful in a situation. We end up fighting physically with people, and So to unlearn those things, I think sometimes men still kind of swallow their emotions, and those uh, they'll either come out in. For me, I had when I was younger, I had a problem with rage. My anger would turn to rage because I would swallow things and not speak up, and then eventually I would erupt like a volcano. I've learned to deal with that because that I pay the price for that. I pay with high blood pressure and other, loss of sleep and things like that. So I've learned that I need to talk about stuff, otherwise I'm paying the price. And so what you probably experienced was maybe some of those men were holding on to stuff, and once you gave them the safe space to let that out, it came out. And I've seen myself even going into talking circles where sometimes I felt like, pretty on top of the world, things were going good and stuff, and as soon as they handed me that eagle feather, boy, the tears
Yeah,
just came,
yeah,
because my spirit, my body is saying, you're holding on to stuff and you need to get that out, otherwise you're going to be sick. And so I think it's a really good that we have these opportunities to kind of show people a path and give them the safe space to feel their feelings. It's the old saying, right? You can't heal what you can't feel.
mm,
So if you're numbing your feelings, you
mm,
can't heal them.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I like it. Like you're dragging your feet over a carpet and the static builds up and builds up until you
Yeah,
snap. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
yeah. So what would you say? Like, so if they're transitioning to that type of model, then I guess the kind of like the old ways of doing things might not. Or what challenges do you think we face in this field? Like
Well, I think that's the thing, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of these drugs are very potent, and they're so highly addictive that it really is hard for them to make the break. But once they are ready and want to give it their best shot, if they reach out to various supports, whether it's, and sometimes it could be a combination. Like, for example, when I got sober, I got reintroduced to my ways of going to sweat lodges, and I used to go on fasts, and I'd go to a lot of ceremony and stuff like that, and powwows, because I left those behind when I was drinking, because I knew that in our cultures, you don't go to those things when you're under the
mm,
influence of alcohol and
yeah,
drugs. You don't go to a sweat. You don't go to uh, social, spiritual gatherings and things like that. Um, and so I got reintroduced to those things. So I still use 12 steps, but I also use my culture, my traditions, and even the faith community. Like, people in the faith community were, my parents are devout Christians. Where, well, they're both deceased now, but they were devout Christians, and they prayed for me and they helped me. They loaned me their car to go to meetings and things like that. So I used everything that was available to me. And I think that's what we want to do, is give people that opportunity to say, you know, uh, if you're willing, we're willing to walk with you, and these are things we can offer you. And really, if that means eventually they want to get on a land healing, or if they want to just start coming to talking circles, as well as 12-step meetings, or treatment, things like that, we can always be there to walk them through it. And it really is, I think, about just trying to deal with things one day at a time. Because when I got sober, I was young. I was like 27 and a half, I think, or something like that. And the idea of stopping alcohol and drugs for the rest of my life seems so huge,
yeah,
because I knew I had, good chances of living, another 50, 60, 70 years, whatever. Um, but, when I said, all I'm trying to do is stay sober today, and I'll deal with whatever comes up today. I won't worry about tomorrow, because that's gone, and tomorrow's not here yet. Just by focusing on today, it breaks it down into a more manageable steps for us, right? And so, uh, for me, one of the things that I do is, when I wake up in the morning, the first words I say in my language is thank you.
mm,
I thank the Creator for giving me another day,
mm,
because there's some people that didn't wake up this morning when they passed away through the night. And so, by me saying thank you in the morning at the start of my day, that gives me a different outlook, where it's more positive. Then I can see that the Creator has given me many, many things. Today it's sunny. I have a job, I have a roof over my head, there's food in my fridge. things like this. I can start to see my blessings instead of saying, oh, the rent is going to be due and I'm short $50 or $100 for the rent. And you start getting into the negative thinking. But once you start off with that thankfulness, that gratitude, then it just opens up possibilities instead of like making you look at only problems.
Yeah, like lately, one of my little things that irritate me is like, to me, it seems like all the people I'm helping, trying to help, they all need money, and so because I have some blessings too, like, but I don't know, it's just difficult, like, and I understand, like, but it reminds me, I think in the 12 step they say spiritual success always comes before financial success, and so
Yeah.
how do we I don't know, it's just
Yeah.
challenging.
Well, I'll give you a good example. One day on Facebook, I saw a post from somebody whose brother had died, I think from COVID, but he lived in Manitoba and she lived out here, and she wanted to go home for his funeral, and but she didn't have the money. And so she was doing a raffle, I think a 50-50 raffle. And so I bought some tickets, I think $100 worth or whatever. And then I ended up winning. And I think the prize was once she reached $1,000 worth of tickets, should do the draw. Somebody would get 500 and should keep 500. And I ended up winning.
Awesome.
And I said, I'm fortunate right now. I have a job. Like I say, I have a lot of blessings. I'm not really hurting for anything. So I said, keep the money. I said, use that to go home to your brother and see him off in a good way. And apparently she wasn't on my Facebook. This was through a friend, and they sent me a message and said she broke down crying because she felt so thankful that I was generous and gave her the winnings, And I'm not kidding. I think 3-4 days later, I got a call from a company that I do work for. I do consulting work, and they said, Kevin, they said, you've been doing a lot of good work for us, and I want you to send us an invoice for $5,000. You don't have to do any extra work because you've been giving us a lot of good work. And they said, just send us an invoice for 5,000 and we'll pay it. So I donated $500 to this woman who was in need. I wasn't expecting anything in return, and it returned tenfold.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the approach that when people are struggling with financial issues and stuff like that, um, you know, if we try to be of use to other people and help out in whatever way we can, whether it's $10, and I've seen people on welfare with their last $20, give that to somebody who had to go maybe a 5-hour drive to a funeral or something like that, right? Uh, that generosity without conditions comes back to us.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everybody's going to get an offer of $5,000, but they might get the money that they're short for rent, or they might get the money to replace the brakes on their car, through other means. Like one time I wrote a letter to the creator when I moved here to Vancouver about 9.5 years ago. I didn't land a job and right away. And I got some small contracts like, 1,000, 2,000, and I had some savings, but my savings was getting low, and rent. I had to pay rent and stuff. And so I wrote a letter to the creator, and I said, I'm behind on my bills. I think I was $5,000 at the time. I was getting behind on my car payments and credit cards and things like that. And I said, I need $5,000 to meet my obligations. Now, I didn't ask for $5,000. I just stated my need. I said, I need $5,000 to meet my obligations. And I folded that letter up and I put it in my wallet. And once again, I'm not kidding. About 4 or 5 days later, I got a call from Musqueam. They said, Kevin, are you still doing contract work? And I said, yes. And I said, we have a contract with you. Can you come in and meet about it? The contract was for exactly $5,000, basically what I had stated I needed. So once again, that's the thing. When we state our needs to the creator, to the universe, whatever, if they're genuine, if it's not self-serving and, that type of thing, generally our answers are met.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I kind of like I think we sort of have to be strategic. Like when the 60 scoop money came in, I saw somebody came into the office. I was ED downtown, and he said, "Here's $200." I was like, "Oh man, I don't know." Like, like I've seen him give out. I mean, within a very short period of time, he probably spent it all. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I know I come from the same way too. I'm like I could do a lot of work, and I don't even need to get paid for it. Like, so yeah, it's pretty blessed, and it's and I did it not only for myself, like anyone that I like 10, 15, however many, I want the same exact. So if they want to take a trip, go ahead, take a trip. If they need to take their aunties into the bottle depot, jump
Yeah.
in your own vehicle, go. Or if you want to help somebody else, do it too. Yeah,
Yeah.
like yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
For sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so like what like so if those are some of the challenges, are like what do you think, how like, because like you being a consultant, probably working with different organizations, like one of the challenges I see is like they don't work together. Like should we though, or like is that a challenge, or is it, do you see that?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the things. Like, when I'm from the Maritimes, right? And I think when I was back there doing consulting work, only one local reserve next to mine hired me for contract work. All the others were national organizations like AFN, uh, you know, uh, uh, mostly the national organizations, the Aboriginal organizations. And sometimes our community is like that. It's almost like we think the experts are outside of our community,
Mm.
and that we have to go and hire, people with PhDs and stuff like that. Sometimes non-Indigenous people, but we have a lot of talent within our community, right? And so I think that's part of the problem, is that maybe that lateral violence that exists in our community are people that kind of wrongly judge people like myself and you, and say, we need somebody different who's more neutral, or whatever, right? And we have our own politics in our own communities as well, so that's part of the reality. But I think more and more, uh, when we have something to offer, we will always find somebody who's willing to listen to what we have to offer, especially if it's done in a good way. Like when we're based on our experience, when we've seen problems and we've found solutions, things like that. And that's where I kind of work from a lot. I really try to give people ways of getting past something, like I don't just do a contract and say, like keep trying to milk it for whatever it's worth, like to try and get as much money out of it as possible. In fact, a lot of times I give people, uh, nonprofits, a break, because I know if it's a small nonprofit, they might have limited money. And so if they need a proposal, I might say, okay, give me $1,000 or 1,500.
Mm.
Whereas some consultants will charge 5,000, 7,000, 10,000. So I'll give them a break and they'll get the funding. There was one group in Saskatchewan that I wrote a bunch of proposals for them, and I doubled their budget. I brought in like over $1 million, just a little over $1 million, and all they paid me for that year was about 30,000. So for 30,000, they got $1 million,
Mhm.
and so it's because I believe they were doing good work, and I want to help them do their good work. And sometimes staff don't have the time, especially if you're a small agency, you're doing everything, and so by me getting them money, then they can hire more people and then help our people better. So for me, it's about that not everybody works together, but we do find people that we can support, that are like-minded, that think like us. And these podcasts, I think, are ways of showing people that there's other ways of getting by. And when we volunteer, sometimes a job might come open, and because we've been volunteering at Aboriginal Front Door in the downtown east side or somewhere else, then they might say, hey, you want a job, instead of just volunteering, and then you get an opportunity, a door opens.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of like still stuck in like actually I have something called a Recovery Warriors Tribe community that I'm trying to develop online, where I post I do like a my own, just me and the camera type talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, so where I just I come up with topics and stuff like that, maybe Google or whatever, or but yeah, just or my own experiences, and I try to share like some things that they could consider. But yeah, in their and because yeah, due to that loneliness and working in silos and like so people can see that maybe yeah they aren't alone. I think yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, when you speak of those things, like, it's good to connect with people that have different experiences and skills and resources. So for example, I remember one time I was the executive director for the Canadian Indigenous Nurses Association, and we had funding for summer students, for 2 summer students. So I put it out on my Facebook and I let people know, and the word spread. And I got an email from a young Inuk student, and she just wrote. She says, "I hear you're hiring. I'm interested." No resume, no cover letter, or anything like that. And so, because I'm kind of like I try to mentor and teach youth how to do things better. I took time and I wrote back to her and I said, I said, this is how you could have done it better, because most people would just put your email in the junk folder or delete it. They wouldn't even respond to you. I said, what you should have done was say, ask some questions like, I hear you're hiring. Can you tell me what the jobs are? And even attach your resume and say, I am so and so from here. I'm looking for summer work. I'll be going back to university in the fall, type thing. So I gave her those tips so that she never just does that again and emails somebody like such a blank statement, right? And so I think, and I've also seen people where, because I've been on the hiring end of things, so I've been an executive director or a CEO for close to 20 years with different organizations. And so I've hired a lot of people over the years, and there's people that have a lot of bad resumes, and so sometimes when people will send me their resume, I'll reformat it. I'll fix it up, and then I'll send it back to them so that it's cleaner, it's neater. When they send it to a job that they're interested in, the interviewers can screen a lot better, because if it's too messy, if there's too much stuff in there, and I find some Indigenous people will list all their work going back 20 years.
Yeah.
I've seen resumes like 12 pages long. That's way too much,
Yeah, yeah.
like, 2, 3 pages, 4 at the most, if, in some cases. And so I help people that way. And so I think that's something maybe you could do with your recovery warrior thing, is invite people in to talk about how to land a job, like how to handle an interview, what your resume should look like, and things like that, and how to find tips to redo your format, to reformat your resume. Some of those practical skills that help people get through life, because Metro Vancouver is so expensive to live that we need to be trying to get the best income possible.
Yeah.
Um, and so any tips, even from like getting people to talk about, uh, the cottage industry, like how to do stuff at home, like whether it's making dream catchers, or any other talent you have, to bring in a little bit of side money, so that you're once again, like, staying above water. So uh, those are some examples that I think you could do to kind of give people a well-rounded kind of connection, and it helps you fill your time and your purpose by trying to give people information and tools to live a better life.
Yeah, actually, I had a concept where they treat recovery like a job. So, what's your overall objective? What special interest do you want to get involved in? What education level do you want to achieve? And what
Yeah.
work experiences? And like,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I know, like, a lot in the treatment sector will use terms like relapse prevention,
Mm,
and I say that's a deficit language.
mm,
Why don't you say wellness strengthening
mm,
plan?
mm.
Instead of deficit uh, relapse prevention.
Wow.
So it's how we look at things, right? Once again, it goes back to like me starting my day off by saying thank you to the Creator.
Yeah.
How we look at things. If we're looking at things in an asset, as an asset, or through a positive lens, then we see things differently.
Mm. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, so with your experiences and working with different organizations and like how could people support the work that you do? Like,
Well, I'm happy to connect with people. I belong to a number of different coalitions and networks. Some are on climate change. Some are uh, sort of like from the faith-based communities, like various religions that come together to talk about the various issues happening in society. So that's one way that people can support me is by letting me know of things that they're working on, like your Recovery Warrior program. And so if I'm able to eventually set up that on the land healing, then I can connect with you so that if there are people in your circle that want to connect through that pathway, we can, make it happen for them, and so they can reach out to me through email. My email is jkevinbarlow@yahoo.com. J like the letter, KEVIN at yahoo.com. Send me an email. Let me know who you are, things you're looking for. Sometimes even like, people are looking for jobs, and I'm connected to a headhunter firm that, sometimes they're looking for Indigenous people to fill jobs. And so if I have people's resumes, I can forward that on to him when he reaches out to me. And so it's kind of a back and forth where they let me know what they do, uh, areas I can help, and I let them know things I'm working on that they might be interested in.
Awesome. That's great. Because I know sometimes it could feel like we're operating in our own little silo, and like there's anyone here that like hello, like I'm,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for
That,
sure. I remember when I was younger, starting off, uh, there were days when I would just feel so overwhelmed
mm,
because I knew there were so many things that I want to help change in our communities. Like, I want to stop young people from killing themselves. I want to stop the family violence. I want to stop our kids from going into foster
mm,
care. I want to stop our young men from going into prison and stuff like that. And it would just seem so overwhelming. But then what I would have to do is bring it back that all I can do is today.
mm,
First of all, I have to stay sober. I have to take care of myself, because then I can't help others if I'm not helping myself. And then only do what I can do that day, like not, stay up 18 hours a day working on stuff, because then I'll burn myself out.
yeah,
And so, that's worked over the last 33 years, where I have seen changes, not all the changes I want, but I have seen changes where, we are making differences on suicide prevention. We are making differences on children in care.
mm,
We are making differences in getting more of our people on a healing journey, getting sober and alcohol and drug free. And for those that still need to use alcohol and drugs, we don't isolate them. We find ways of still working with them and sharing, connecting them and trying to keep them in the circle. So I have seen change, but there's a lot more that we need to all work toward.
yeah. That's true. Yeah, and that's the main reason why I'm doing this, and maybe reaching out to other organizations and seeing really sort of what's happening out there, and how could we work together a little bit more, and like sharing of information and all that.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Do you think I missed anything type thing?
No, I think we've covered a lot. I think once again, I really drive home the point that if there are any Indigenous men listening,
Mm,
if they can try to get into the helping professions, even if it means just starting off as sort of a peer counselor, something like that, uh, and then we can find ways of getting people scholarships and bursaries to kind of go and do their undergraduate degree and master's degree, because it's the same idea that only an alcoholic can help an alcoholic,
mhm,
but sometimes it takes a man to be listening to another man to help them unpack some of the wounds, especially if some men have had problems with maybe their dads, like their fathers were maybe violent toward them or not accepting of them, or
mm,
had
mm,
high expectations
mm,
and that type of thing, or maybe we've had abandonment issues where our dads promised to come to our
mm.
uh, baseball games or hockey tournaments, but then they were drunk and they never showed up. And so all that abandonment, disappointments, like all that stuff, as we unpack it, we can share that with other men to help them heal, so that they don't have to turn to those things like I did, like turning anger into rage or becoming violent and fighting with people. They can, live a different way. So I think that's one of the areas that we really need is, and this is, based on our traditions, right? Like at one time, men taught younger men how to be a man and what they needed to do. Likewise, with women, they taught young women what it was to be a woman, those responsibilities and things like that. And so it's kind of the same, almost like recovery warriors of today, using those traditional roles that we had. So that's what I really would encourage people.
Yeah, I see a lot of the Indigenous women. Yeah, they're kind of more or less leading the charge, and like, because somebody mentioned that to me a few years ago. There's not too many Indigenous men out there that they get healthy who they could rely on and stuff like that.
Yeah, and even family violence and spousal abuse and stuff like that. A lot of the people that are working in that sector are women,
Mhm.
but you can't heal that issue with only half the population talking about it. Men need to be saying something about it. We need to be reaching out to men who are prone to violence to say, talk with me first, like let
Mm.
vent and get it out with me instead of hitting her,
Yeah,
and let them know, there's another way of dealing with anger and rage, and likely what was learned behavior. Maybe they saw their dad beating their mom that way. So that's the thing, like, some of these things that we really need to tackle. We need both men and women coming together in strong traditional roles, who heal themselves first and then are able to give back to our community.
yeah. Like, I was facilitating a workshop one time, and this guy had a coffee cup there or something, and he just started getting angry, and he got out of his chair and he just flicked the coffee cup. But for the most part, I was facilitating. I was okay with it. I probably would have stepped in if, like, it was majority men anyways.
Yeah,
But yeah, having a female facilitator there, they might have responded to it a lot differently. Whereas I was kind of
yeah,
like okay with it, and I just carried on. Like, yeah.
yeah, for sure. And that's really a good example, right, of how, as I said, I used to stuff my feelings and not did not come out and then it erupt, right? But I was told once by an elder that crying is really powerful, especially if we do it in the ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like, if you think about it as an adult, if we heard a child crying,
Mm-hmm.
at minimum, we would look over to see what's wrong, right?
Yeah.
Or we might even go over to see what's wrong. And it's the same thing when we cry. The creator comes to see what's wrong with us.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And so by us crying, we're actually opening that portal, that door, that connection to the creator. And I was once told that our spirit is that connection. No, no, our spirit is that individual spark of life that's in us. It's what makes me, me, and you. It's that purpose that we have, whereas our soul is our connection to the creator. And our soul contains everything we will ever need to get from where we're at to where we're supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so, once again, like, I think if we stay in touch with our emotions and if we feel these freely and get them out, we open that portal to the creator, which is within us. And that, I think, sometimes that's why they call addiction a soul sickness, because we're looking inside the bottle for the answer instead of looking within ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So if we turn to the creator and let our feelings out, we find our path, we can see clearer. And science even tells you that when you cry, there's a whole bunch of toxins that are released. And that's why after you have a good cry, you can see more clearly, and it's lighter and stuff like that. So Western science tells us one thing, but our indigenous ways of knowing tells us another.
Yeah.
And together, we can see the wisdom of it.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. that's that's great. So yeah, I'm not too sure how we should close, or how do would
Yeah.
you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to end.
Yeah.
So I wish you well, Jackson, on your podcasts and your efforts to help our community. And if there's any way I can help out, let me know. And uh, for the audience, feel free to reach out to me if you want to connect in some way.
Yeah.
So take
Yeah,
care.
this was great. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I'll send you the link to the Recovery Warriors, and I'll share the link with for this podcast to you.
Sounds
Yeah,
good. Take
yeah,
care.
appreciate it. Thanks.
Bye.